Hey guys, SoCal Val here. You are listening to the Hitting the Turnbuckle podcast.
Welcome everybody back to the Hitting the Turnbuckle channel. I'm your host Adam Cousins, and it's one of our wrestling interviews today. It's our first wrestler interview of 2024. We've had Lee from Progress. That was an owner or a co-owner. This is the first wrestler of 2024. Someone who is going to have a massive year in UK independent wrestling. Sorry to big you up too much, but it's Mr. Arthur Skurro. Good evening to you. How are you?
Good evening. Very well. How are you?
Not too bad. It's fucking freezing.
It is. I was going to join in just a t-shirt, and I was like, I'm going to have to put a hoodie on over the top.
So I've done. I've got your shirt, which people can see, maybe. Yeah, there it is. Your shirt with a fleece hoodie because it is just atrocious, the weather at the moment. Don't know if it's still snowing. It was earlier on. Would need more than a pirate ship in this weather, Arthur, to get around. But hey-ho.
A few fires going. Yeah.
Need some fire somewhere for sure. Anyway, thanks for joining us on the show. We met at Ignite back in November.
Yeah.
When a certain family member of yours had a bit of a win.
Yeah, he's done all right, hasn't he, for himself?
Just a bit. Multiple time champion everywhere he's gone. His first defense coming up. But we're not talking about your Adonis Payne. We're talking about you. Obviously, wrestling being in the family, and obviously cooking being in the family as well. That's another big thing about you. How did this all come about? What made you fall in love with this mad sport?
It's an interesting story, actually. So in terms of like my fandom of wrestling, that was when I was a kid. Like me and my brothers, there's three of us in total. We'd watch wrestling all the time. We had a trampoline in the garden, so we were always like messing about and hurting each other and trying to do really stupid things. Very like backyard wrestling. There was no safety involved. It was just someone's getting their head taken off. And me being the oldest normally came out on top as well. So always benefited me. Yeah, so we watched it from a young age, or primarily WWE. I haven't really branched out away from that in terms of kind of like what I view, except for now, obviously in the world of social media, you can kind of see the highlights of everything.
Yeah.
My parents are like amazing. They used to take us to like SmackDown and Raw. Mainly my dad. My mum got to a point where she was like, "Yeah, you can go on your own." So yeah, we'd see the live shows when they come to the UK and everything else. And I actually fell out of love with WWE and wrestling for a while. I think we all get to that certain age where you're like, the magic's gone when you kind of find out that it's not real fighting. Yeah. I'm not going to say the dreaded F word because I hate it. But when you kind of find out that no one's actually trying to legitimately hurt each other, you kind of, which is weird for a kid to be like, I want the bloodlust. But, you know, you do kind of drop out. Some people don't, and fair play to them, but I definitely dropped out for quite a few years. And it was only when my younger brother, as you mentioned, Adonis Payne, he approached me back in 2017, 2018, and was like, "Hey, I've got a spare ticket to go and watch Raw live in London. Do you want to come?" And I was like, "Yeah, sweet, let's go." I went down, and I was a 12-year-old again, just on my feet, just chanting, clapping. That when music hits, and the love just came swimming back. And yeah, been watching kind of mainstream WWE since. And in terms of my own wrestling, it's a different story. So he was starting to train at the time. And we talk about that periodically, but I was playing American football. Was also working in a very physical job at the time. So that was what I was doing. And when he started getting on shows, I wasn't always available because I was probably playing.
Yeah.
And it got to a certain point where when I broke off into an off season, wrestling doesn't really have an off season. So I was then able to go and watch more and more shows. So I was down at the likes of UPW and Square One Academy, watching the shows that he was on there, watching Sacrifice Pro Wrestling, as well, mainly just at those areas. Had branched down to United Wrestling in Oxford as well and watched him on a show there as he started kind of getting around a more local area. And my parents and a few other people turned to me and was like, "Why don't you do this? You'd absolutely love this." And I was like, "I would love this." But I was very into what I was doing at the time, and I wasn't ready to walk away from American football. And then there was some politics that happened in the team that I wanted to remain very Switzerland on. So I was like, this is a good time for me to step away and maybe think about doing something different. Been about 2.5, 3 years by that point. So I kind of sat doing nothing for a few months. And one day I just got this email. I was sat at my desk working, and this email came up. It was Square One Academy, and it was Justin, also known as Hugo Bloom, had emailed me from the academy going, your parents have put £50 in a pot. It's for you to use however you want to use it. Come down, let's do some training and see what you think. And that was the push I needed, because I don't know how long it would have taken me to actually take my own steps into wrestling. There was very much a whole, I don't want to step on my brother's toes. It's kind of his thing. It's what he's doing. And I spoke to him about it. I was like, what do you think? He was like, do it. Just do it. You'll love it. So I'm trying to think now. It must have been around the 23rd of August last year. Not last year, sorry, now we're in 2024. So 2022, August 2022, that I stepped in the training ring to start off with. And then I haven't stopped being in a training ring pretty much every week since. It's it's really gripped hold of me, and yeah, that's the kind of story, really.
That is it. And those first, that first training session when you start, I mean, you've done the trampoline stuff. I've got a trampoline in the garden. I would never get involved in it now, but you've had your first training session when you're doing it properly. You take that first bump. What's the reaction in your body and your head at that point?
It's funny because I've listened to, like, I'm a big fan of the podcast itself. I listened to a lot of other kind of wrestling podcasts around, and you hear the stories of people getting in and going, I took my first bump and it was horrible. I didn't have that feeling. And I think it's because the American football helps. You get hit very hard. I don't care what anyone says. The padding does not help. If anything, it makes it worse. And before that, or during and kind of around that, I was a prison officer for 7.5 years. So very physical. You end up taking a lot of uncomfortable landings on a lot harder surfaces than a wrestling ring. So my first bump didn't feel that bad at all. If anything, I was like, I want to do another one. And yeah, it just, taking that bump, running the ropes, just being in a ring, it felt really natural, it felt really normal to me. And yeah, it was like a drug after that. I just couldn't be in there enough.
Wow. Interesting. So yeah, I remember you should listen to the podcast, so you'll know I was in wrestling school for a month. No, not for me. I'd rather do this than the heart issue now. I've got an excuse.
Yeah.
Before that, I had no excuse. You said you obviously watched WWE growing up as a kid, obviously pre falling out of love and reigniting that love. Who was it that you looked up to in WWE and to sort of aspire yourself to be like?
My all-time number one is Triple H. I think he's incredible no matter what he's doing. Up there, you've obviously got to throw up Edge, you've got to throw up The Undertaker, you've got to throw Shawn Michaels, Bret Hart, Ricky Steamboat, Rick Rude. I mean, these are before I really started watching wrestling, but it's kind of since watched their stuff. And just, there's so many you could list. But yeah, my number one guy is going to be Triple H all day long. I think he was phenomenal, and I was so upset when he just couldn't go anymore.
Yeah, me too. I was a big Triple H fan. I had the privilege of meeting him at WrestleMania one year, very briefly, but we had a test of strength across the autograph table. The picture's quite funny because you've got my arm and his arm. You could tell who was working out and who wasn't. He had this monster arm and I had this other one. I met the Undertaker on the same day actually, but yeah, Triple H was always my favorite. But going out to, do you ever sort of, when you're looking at your move, even when you're doing your move sets, you obviously, a character has a typical move set that they do. Have you used any Triple H's stuff in there? Would you want to try and incorporate some of the stuff that he does and twist and maybe even change it a little bit to make it yours?
There's a few, but I also have to look at it and go, like, do I wrestle like Triple H? And is my character similar to what he was doing? And In some cases, yes, like depending on kind of the match structure and everything, but really, like I haven't used that much. Like in all honesty, like you see some people who like, their favorite wrestler, like they'll just use their finish.
Yeah.
Whereas for me, I was like, what would, this pirate character, what's that gonna look like in terms of a finisher? And the pedigree is very well used across wrestling. So it was something I had to, keep to one side. And spine busters are also very well used. And so I suppose it's little things like just the way that he sells or used to sell and, throw his punches. And it's those little kind of nuanced moments where there's no missed footwork and, spilling out the ring just always looked really impressive. And it's those kind of little bits about his work that I really look at. And it's once you get into wrestling and kind of start analyzing it, it's quite hard to watch wrestling any other way. You start picking up like tiny things where you go, oh, there was a bit of a missed time there, or like footwork wasn't quite as good as it could have been. And it's really hard to sit and enjoy it as a really neutral fan now. But yeah, I mean, it's those little bits about him that just, it was head and shoulders above everyone else, and his mind for the business as well. Just, you see that now with what he's doing in terms of running creative and things like that. It's just, yeah, it's crazy. Just he's a overall package for anyone who wants to watch some good wrestling.
He certainly is. I also share your thing of when I'm watching wrestling, I am more zoned into what's going on rather than so maybe at Ignite last time I got a bit involved, Sun was there, so I made it probably a bit different. But usually I'm literally lasered on from entrance to I don't sort of look at missteps or anything like that, but I'm more let's see how body language and sort of moves are panning out on their own. But obviously, yeah, missteps and everything is there. But when you are doing your character, how do you sort of then attribute a sort of move set? Do you sort of think, oh, would that look good? Because it's obviously important that you've got to have a move set that does work with your character. You can't really do a pedigree because what relevance would that be? You can't really be called a walk the plank because you're not really, that move isn't a walk the plank, is it?
Yeah, exactly. So there was a lot of thought like that goes into the moves that I do. So there's a couple where it's like I'll whip round someone and float over and hit a neck breaker, and I don't have a particular name for that, but it's just more like when I think about the mindset of like Arthur Skurro, like there's two sides. I mean, you might see this if anyone's on my socials, or if you're on my socials, there's two sides of that character. There's a good guy who just wants to be friends with everyone. He's a bit silly, not always there, but will throw something very unexpected out of the bag to get wins off, and still a legitimate person in the ring, but it's also a little bit like away with the fairies at times. So that's kind of where those come from. There's a lot of quickness and a lot of response to anything he's taken or trying to get the win in that situation. Whereas with bad guy is a point of view, isn't it? So let's call it the other side of the character is very much a lot more slams, power. You're going to acknowledge that he's your captain, and is really in charge of himself and in charge of the situation. So in terms like that's more the mentality, but I try to put the mentality across in the moves. So I've got like a walk the plank leg drop where I'll come off the ropes, take some very small paces, and then come up and hit a big leg drop. And then the setup for that is very different depending on which side of the character that we're seeing on that particular show. The finisher that I've adapted for me is the End of Days from Baron Corbin.
Yeah.
So that's like swinging flatliner. And I've renamed that to the World's End, which is obviously a link to Pirates of the Caribbean 3, which is a fantastic film, just in case anyone wants to know my opinion on that. And that just works really well for the kind of out of nowhere, but also a big setup. And it's, I think as well, being able to kind of give it a name that suits the character is also kind of another big thing, but it doesn't take too much away from the original name either. So it's my moveset now is quite different from when I first started, because it's like, oh, I want to do this move, I want to do this move, I want to do this move, and then you start to kind of think, well, how do you get into it? How do you get out of it? In what point of a match are you in? Does it work for someone my size and build? I'm 6'4", So some moves don't look right. And other ways as well, you have to think, can I do this move on everyone, or is it only for a set few people? Because you have to take into consideration everybody else's size and strength and power. So you've got to be able to kind of pull things in and out. You know, for example, I've done a couple of uranagis here and there, but if you haven't got someone who can particularly jump well, to look right on someone like me, they need to be able to jump, so we get some nice height and move. So yeah, there's a lot of different thought that goes into it. It's like science sometimes, you know. But I hope that does answer the question. I feel like I rambled a little bit on that
No,
one.
it's absolutely fine. It's interesting actually, because one of the things we've had a lot of wrestlers on and sort of really in depth what you're going into, and it's really important that people actually understand this when you're wrestling. It's great to have these moves that you see, and you may see the argument sake, not in the WWE, but you may see the Young Bucks do like a 450 or something like that. But the importance of when Brock Lesnar once tried to shoot in star press against Kurt Angle at WrestleMania, he missed it. He undershot it, I think, more than anything. But it's like, whether or not that would work, A, in a match, B, should have even done it. I know that he's done it before. I've seen a video of him doing it. It's very impressive. But it's like Omos being a 7 foot. You wouldn't want him to. Couldn't see him doing a 619 for argument's sake. Do you know what I mean? A, it wouldn't look right. B, probably hasn't got that way of doing it. So it is important that people understand that you also to tweak it to who you're wrestling. You've made a great point. A lot like if you have a big guy and a little guy, the big power moves are going to hurt a lot more and actually look a lot better on those, because the size difference and the weight difference will always look at that. So it is important that people, even aspiring wrestlers, if you are training to be a wrestler, that's a great point that you've just made there. Going on to your first ever match, what was obviously you played American football, you've done all this, but when your music hits for the first time and you're going out there, regardless of whether it's in front of 5 people, 50 people, 50,000 people, what was that feeling like as you're just about to walk out the curtain for the first time?
Oh man, it's great because the feelings never change for me from like appearance one to anything coming up. I'm going to feel the exact same before going in there, which I take as a good thing, because you know there is so much passion and care that goes into everything. You know, not just training as regularly as you can and trying to be in the best shape, but making sure that your gear looks great, your branding looks great, and you know, gym and everything else. So kind of that's every time you step through a curtain, that's the kind of payoff moment where you're like, this is worth it, you know. So that first feeling. So my debut was in May. I was very lucky to get a debut so early, and I'm going to get shouted at by my coaches for saying I'm lucky because they hate it when I don't take any credit. But I'm going to say it anyway. Yeah, so I got a debut in 9 months after starting training, and really only started going really regularly in Jan of 22. So I was in a battle royal. It was a #1 contendership match, and there was 12 of us, I believe. 6 people starting out. So it was a bit of a hybrid actually between a battle royal and a Royal Rumble. So you had 6 come out and start off. It was 5 or 6. Hopefully I don't get it wrong. And there was a lot of debuts in there as well. So a lot of fresh faces, a lot of fresh nerves. But I felt oddly calm until I read the run sheet and I was the last man out. And it had this big square off spot with like really big dude. And it was a real kind of like babyface save moment to even the odds between the good guys and the bad guys. And then chaos ensued and there's a load of eliminations. And then I got down to the final 4 as well. And then I think I was out. So I've technically finished 3rd in that #1 contendership match. First appearance. And I was completely fine. Like the night before, slept like a baby. Got there, put the ring up, chatted, sorted out my spots, went backstage, got ready. I think we were second match out, stood behind the curtain. And the only point where it hit me was when I was stood there waiting for my music to hit. And all of a sudden I was like, I feel sick, I'm shaking. And then the music hits and I go through the curtain and it all goes. Because I'm not me anymore, as in, you know, I'm Arthur Skurro, and that's my time. That's my stage, and I take every opportunity that I've got the best way I possibly can. But yeah, the nerves always hit me right at the point where I'm waiting for my music.
It's interesting.
Up until that point, I'm fine.
It's interesting. I was gonna get onto this because again, if you've listened to the podcast, you know that we do ask questions about random questions, and I'm thinking, well, let's do that before we get on to appearances and whatnot else. So we're talking theme music, but before we ask that question, how important is the theme music and the character to it goes together?
Oh, it's so important, and it's so hard sometimes to find what works. But weirdly, you've caught me on a really good day because I've just found another track that I really want to use that works really well. So, um, yeah, it's a whole package, right? So when your music hits is one, it's the first step to a brand new crowd or a brand new audience member who's never been to a show before, or even particularly just happen to not be on a show that you're not there, to go, okay, who's this? And then you come through the curtain, and it's about how your appearance links to the music, and how your body language and your behavior also links to all of that as well. For them to initially go, one, they want to know whether they're cheering you or they're booing you. So you've got to put that across straight away. Two, if you're a character, because not everyone is necessarily a character in wrestling, then how are you putting that across? So for me, it's the music and the look that I go for with the flags and my gear and everything else, and coats, makeup, the all that sort of thing. But for me, the music has to work. I've done a show before where they didn't have my music. So I came out to something that I'd had no kind of choice in. And you make it work. You just come out and you make it work, and you can kind of outshine that if you really need to, if you try hard enough. But ultimately, when you've kind of made the effort to sit and listen to hundreds and hundreds of tracks and really kind of go, this is the one that personifies the character more than anything else, it's a massive help to have that. So I've got two tracks that I use, again, depending on which side of Arthur Skurro walks through the curtain. Completely depends on which set of music you're going to hear, and also what kind of look you're going to get as well. So I'm very conscious of that. There's two very different appearances, two very different sets of music, and two very different attitudes that you'll get from me, depending on how I've been booked, or how the promoter wants me to be in that show. What gap am I filling in, and how am I advancing or making that product so much better by being there? And that's kind of where it all comes in, and it starts from the music.
It's interesting. That sounds a bit like a Bray Wyatt type of thing. God rest his soul. That he used, not that he had different musics, but when you had the Fiend, and then you had the Wyatt family, and then you had the last character that was kind of a mixture of everything put together. And he had different music at that time. And yeah, it's interesting how you got two different musics. That's one for the fans. You can't let us in, tell us what that is. Fans have to wait and see what version of you they're getting. So we're not going to let you tell us who or what music that is. I wouldn't want to do that. But talking of theme music, what's your favorite wrestling theme music?
Now, that's a really tough one because there's so many good ones out there. Anything written by Motorhead for Triple H is amazing. The Undertaker's Graveyard Symphony is just, you get that when that like gong hits right at the beginning, every single time you get the pop. Stone Cold Steve Austin's glass breaking, that gets brought up so much, but you really just, it's iconic. I don't know if I could pick one.
Playlist. Do a playlist. Do a wrestling. If you had a wrestling playlist, a choice of 5 songs that you would, who would it?
King of Kings.
Yeah.
By Motorhead for Triple H. Probably closely followed by Evolution.
I love that track.
Well, and Evolution's so good.
Yeah.
So good. I'm actually going to go for Roman Reigns' current entrance track.
That's good. Yeah.
I love that in the gym.
The best thing about it is no words.
No.
Like you don't need it. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah. You honestly don't need it. I'm trying to think what's on my playlist now. I've got a wrestling playlist that I use quite regularly for different things. I'm going to miss something that someone's going to message me and be like, how did you not mention this track? I know I listen to this sometimes and go, oh, that's a great shout. And then it's all gone out of my head in one go. Shawn Michaels probably up there as well. Very different style of music, but yeah, really, really, really good. And I'm gonna go for Bray Wyatt as the Fiend with Let Me In. I think Code Orange were a part of. I'm a big metal fan, so those kind of tracks really they're great. I think
Yeah,
that's five. Is that five? Did I do
yeah, that was
five?
five. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
you got five there. You got five. I was actually talking the other day to a good friend about. We used to be a big fan of pay-per-view themes, and
Mm.
this wasn't necessarily a pay-per-view as such, but I'm pretty sure it was the first ever Elimination Chamber, and Chris Jericho come out to King of My World from Saliva, and I hadn't heard it for ages, and I literally was on my it was on my Spotify, and I played wrestling themes just to walk because I have a walk from the train station to the office, and it come on, and I was like, "What is this?" I forgot all about it, and I was like, "That's amazing."
I can't believe I missed out Chris Jericho off that list as well. Like with Judas being such a great track as a band of Fozzy as well. I've seen that live at AEW, but also when Fozzy played Bloodstock as well.
Yeah.
And obviously Break the Walls Down too. So yeah, I
Yes,
mean, more great tracks.
there is so many. It is difficult to choose from. But if you could go to one wrestling pay-per-view, what would it be?
It's got to be WrestleMania.
I've had that thing. I've had that. Royal Rumble was mine. I was meant to be going this year. That ain't happening.
That'd have been amazing.
It's the only one. It's the only one of the big. Well, Survivor Series I've not been to. I don't have that. SummerSlam '92 was my first. Showing the age. But yeah, WrestleMania 21, 5, 6, 7, 8. And I need to do a Royal Rumble to complete the set.
Yeah, Royal Rumble's got to be up there. But for me to do like both nights of Mania, now that it's a 2 night event, I feel like that's the top. The Rumble would be definitely up there though. 100%. The Royal Rumble's one of my favorite pay-per-views.
Yeah, I love it. It is my favorite one. And that it used to be Money in the Bank, actually, was one because I love ladder matches as well, was a bit crazier to do. But yeah, Rumble because of the unexpectancy. You don't know who's coming out, and there is that surprise that you generally get during it. Yeah, WrestleMania, if you ever go, just when you get there and you get into the stadium, just look around and just breathe it in. Because that's in 2 nights now, you can do it twice. Or
Exactly.
5 nights if you go for the combo tickets where they do everything else. I mean,
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. I would, Money in the Bank is also definitely a phenomenal concept, and a lot of different places now have taken that kind of briefcase or that,
yep.
key to the city type kind of gimmick
Yes.
away from it. I think I'd love Money in the Bank a little bit more if we saw a bit more with the briefcases, over the last couple of years. But, hopefully we'll get back to that.
Yeah, I hope so. So here's the last question before we kick off with the rest of the rest of your history and what you've got coming up, etc. A promoter comes to you in the UK and says, "Right, Arthur, we can get we got to make this fair now. You can't say anyone that's say currently employed by the big federations. Any free agents out there, and say for example, let's do a fatal four-way: 2 imports from America or Japan, and 1 from the British independent scene in a fatal four-way, or maybe even a tag team with Adonis. Who would it be?"
So they've got to be free agents.
Yeah, to make it a bit more fair, yeah, they have to be free agents.
Oh, that's even harder. Someone off a big roster I could have named you. Oh, in a fatal four-way. Right, from the UK, big name who I'd love. And my brother's going to kill me for not saying him. Sorry, mate. But Spike Trevay, I'd have straight away in a fatal four-way. Just one of my absolute favorite people to watch work. He is just sensational. And I think I would just happily just not wrestle again if I got the chance to wrestle him. Be another tick in the box. Other big free agents who I'd want to mess around with in a ring. Fantastic question. All that's come into my head is people that are signed to big places. So
okay, you can be going and do it to people that have signed them.
When your mind goes really blank when someone asks you a question, and I'm like, they're not free, they're not free, they're not free. just for someone who I think is such an all-round, like phenomenal talent in the ring, just Rhea Ripley,
Wow.
who I think is amazing. And MJF for his sheer ability to just be the biggest knob in wrestling. Don't know if I can say that on your podcast. I
You
apologize.
can, yeah, absolutely. No. That we do allow swearing as long as it ain't the C word. We're all good.
That's fine. Yeah, like when I did like his babyface work when towards the end of his championship run, but MJF as a heel, as well. Just I think that would be Rhea, MJF, Spike Trivet,
There
and
you
me.
go.
Yeah.
Someone, well, I say no one can book that at the minute, but if someone potentially, I was going to say more like a Nick Nemeth. He's a free agent, so Dolph
Yeah,
is a free agent.
yeah, 100%. I was trying to think. There was one person in the list of recent releases that I was really upset about, and now that you mention it, that's the one. I couldn't grab his name. Yeah, Dolph Ziggler, Nick Nemeth. Yeah, just
Ali.
Ali. Yeah, Rick Boogs, I think, was part of that
Yes.
contingent that went as well. Who's just hilarious as a character. Yeah, no, I think so someone who I think deserved better in WWE was definitely Dolph Ziggler. Like, just incredible at selling and ring work, passion and promos. Just top tier.
Now in New Japan.
And he'll smash it out there as well. Fully believe that
Yeah.
because guy's incredible.
He is amazing. But let's go back to you. Obviously, you've got quite a busy schedule coming up. We've got one of your opponents on the show, maybe this week or next week, Tommy Kyle, who you're soon to be taking on, the absolute maverick. How are you looking forward to stepping in the ring with good old TK?
Beyond happy with this one. On the day, you're not going to see that in the slightest. I'm going to take him apart, obviously. But no, there's a lot more behind the scenes, behind the curtain about why this match is really important to me, because Tommy Kyle has coached me more than anybody else in wrestling. Been such an incredible mentor and role model, and to see the way that he's worked after his horrific injury last year to get back and be in incredible shape and just absolutely an insane talent who I just don't understand how is not absolutely everywhere and booked out of his eyeballs, because just phenomenal brain for the business, a phenomenal person inside out. Just honestly, such a great guy. You'll see that when you have him on. He's brilliant. But yeah, I'm so looking forward to that. I know he's going to test me. I know it's going to be tough. Hopefully, it's going to be a hard hitter, and I'm sure all the fans at Sacrifice Pro will be really excited and hopefully really pleased with the match that we put on that day.
I reckon they will be. How is it going to be taking someone that's coached you? How does that change anything during a match? Do you have to think of maybe new things to do?
I don't know. There's still a lot in my locker that I haven't used yet. So there's some interesting stuff this year that I'm hoping to get out there.
Brilliant. Well, why don't you let us know how people can get hold of you on social media, how people can book you, and what you have got coming up. So I know you've got another match coming up before that. What the matches you've got coming up, what you're currently booked on, and how people can get hold of you.
Yeah, so frequently you'll see me at Ultimate British Wrestling, of which the most recent appearance is going to be this Saturday, the 13th, in Biggleswade. It's the Floor is Lava Rumble, which is UBW's answer to the Royal Rumble.
Brilliant.
The benefit of the Floor is Lava is that it doesn't matter how you're eliminated. It doesn't have to be over the top rope. If your feet touch that floor, you're burnt to a crisp and you're out of the Rumble. So a nice kind of change up on your typical over the top rope Rumble. That is going for a shot at a title at any point, and normally it's at our Mania show in which I think this year is happening in March. So hopefully the Pirate Man goes over and gets a title shot, but we'll see. There's about 30 other people I've got to get through first. Then following that, towards the back end, I want to say 27th of January in Sacrifice. It might be the 26th, sorry. It's the Friday, 26th of January. Sacrifice Pro Wrestling in Bedford. That's the one against Tommy Kyle. And yeah, some more dates to be announced. You might see me at United Wrestling coming up, and I have some debuts already booked in the diary. Contacting me at @A_Skurro on Instagram and on X, and then I'm Arthur Skurro on Facebook. You can contact me if you want to book me, or just talk to me, or send me some cool pictures you've taken of me on any of those socials. And then arthur.skurropw@outlook.com is my email address as well, so you can email me if you want to get me in as well. But you'll see me around. I'm traveling around a lot more. Like you said, I've already been down to Ignite to have a little look at what's happening down there, which is just an absolutely incredible promotion. And I'm very, very happy to talk to CJ after last time. I think you saw me before that was the UBW 10th anniversary show, and before that I was just sitting in the crowd watching my brother wrestle. So yeah, a bit of a quick change and turnaround. So yeah, I'm going to get around a lot more this year, be it a lot more promotions, whether I'm booked or not. I'm just going to be getting around, talking to people, and yeah. So if you see me around, come say hi.
Exactly, doing the right thing, getting yourself out there as well. That really helps, especially in this cutthroat as well, because everyone wants to be at the top, and the best way to be at the top is by getting around and making a name for yourself. So you'll definitely do that by doing that. I've got to reel off quite a few, so if I bore you, I'm really sorry with what we've got coming up. So
Carry on.
I believe this week we have the Close Personal Friends coming on, CPF. We also have Hustle Malone coming on this week, someone that's does a lot of pictures for people. Certainly does. It'll be interesting to hear what he's got to say. Chase Anthony's coming on this week as well. We're just going through next week. I might as well get them all on while I'm here. Tommy Kyle is next week for you, and we've also got the NWA, the current NWA TV champion. He might not be TV champion when we speak to him, but that's Big Strong Mims. He'll be coming on the week after. Then we've got your bro's opponent, Ignite, Jay Joshua, who's going to challenge for the Ignite Heavyweight Championship on the 4th of February. He's coming on to talk about that particular match in general, amongst other things. Then we've got the lovely Francesca Oliver from Revolution Pro Wrestling. She'll be coming on for a quick chat at the end of January. And then, of course, we'll have CJ Carter coming on to discuss all things Chapter 3. And then, of course, we will be at Chapter 3 on the 4th of February. But before that, on the 20th of January, next Saturday, our first ever Turnbuckle Women's Champion is crowned at Apex Wrestling. That will be a match. I believe Andy will be going. He returns this week to the podcast after a hiatus for a little bit. He'll be back this week. We also have all the review shows. We will be at Ignite. All I'm going to tell you about Ignite is there may be an announcement at Ignite. That's all I can say on this while we're recording. You may get some other stuff when we're off it. All I can say is there may be an announcement at Ignite for something that's happening in July, but I cannot go any further than that at this stage. But Arthur, it's been great talking to you. I will definitely see you on a wrestling show this year, wherever that may be. I'll make sure to get down there. I'm sure I'll see you at Ignite as well in the future. But we wish you the absolute best of luck this year. You won't need it. And yeah, we'll see you soon. But guys, he has been Arthur Skurro. I have been your host, Adam Cousins. And until next time, everybody, buckle down and stay safe.